My stepsister started an illegal pet-sitting business in my backyard without permission. It ended with a lawsuit. I, 34F, never thought I'd be posting here, but after what my stepsister Megan, 30F, has put me through over the past 3 months, I need to get this off my chest and maybe get some validation that I'm not the crazy one here. A little background. My mom married Megan's dad when I was 12 and she was 8. We were never close. Megan was the golden child from day one. Whatever she wanted, she got. Her dad spoiled her rotten, and my mom, desperate to keep the peace in her new marriage, went along with it. I learned early on to stay out of Megan's way and focus on my own goals. I worked my way through college, got my MSW, and have spent the last 8 years as a social worker specializing in child welfare. It's demanding, emotionally draining work, but I love it. More importantly, I've been financially responsible my entire adult life. While Megan bounced from failed MLM to failed MLM, maxing out credit cards and getting bailed out by her dad, I was saving every penny. 6 months ago, I finally achieved my dream. I bought my first house. It's a modest 3-bedroom in a quiet suburban neighborhood, but it's mine. The backyard was the selling point. A beautiful half-acre with mature trees, a privacy fence, and a lovely lawn that the previous owners had clearly invested years in maintaining. I had visions of summer barbecues, a little vegetable garden, maybe eventually a dog of my own. Enter Megan. 2 months after I moved in, Megan showed up at my door unannounced, gushing about my amazing new place. She'd never shown interest in my life before, so I was immediately suspicious. She spent an hour walking around, paying particular attention to the backyard, asking about my fence height, whether I had security cameras, I didn't, at the time, and what my neighbors were like. A week later, she called me with a business proposition. "So I've decided to start a pet-sitting business," she announced, as if this were groundbreaking news. "And your backyard is perfect. I could watch like 10 dogs at a time back there. You wouldn't have to do anything. I'd handle everything. We could split the profits 70 to 30. I laughed. I actually laughed because I thought she was joking. "Megan, no. Absolutely not." "What? Why not? You're not even using it. It's my property. I don't want a bunch of strange dogs destroying my lawn. And there are probably zoning laws about running a business out of a residential property." "God, you're so selfish. You've always been like this. You have this huge yard and you're just going to let it sit there." The conversation devolved from there. She called me every name in the book before hanging up. I figured that was the end of it. I was wrong. Update 1. The discovery. 3 weeks after that phone call, I came home early from work on a Wednesday. I'd had a particularly brutal day, a case involving severe neglect that had required emergency removal of 3 children from a home, and I just wanted to sit in my quiet backyard with a glass of wine and decompress. What I found instead was chaos. There were 6 dogs in my backyard. 6 dogs I had never seen before, ranging from a tiny yapping Chihuahua to a massive German Shepherd. They had torn up approximately a quarter of my lawn. There were holes everywhere, patches of dead grass where urine had killed it, and what I can only describe as a poop minefield. My garden hose had been dragged across the yard and was currently being used as a chew toy by a golden retriever. My outdoor furniture had been knocked over. And standing in the middle of this disaster, scrolling through her phone while completely ignoring the mayhem, was Megan. "What the hell is going on?" I shouted. Megan looked up, annoyed. "Oh, you're home early. Megan, what are these dogs doing in my yard?" "I told you I was starting a pet-sitting business. These are my clients' dogs. And I told you no. Get them out. Now." She rolled her eyes. "Relax. I'm almost done for the day. I'll be out of here by 5. You'll be out of here right now. This is my property. You are trespassing." "Trespassing? I'm your sister. Stepsister. And that doesn't give you the right to use my property without permission. How did you even get in?" She held up a key. My spare key. The one I had given to our mother in case of emergencies. "Mom gave it to me. She said you wouldn't mind." I was shaking with anger. "Get and leave that key on the counter." What followed was a screaming match that brought 2 of my neighbors to their windows. Megan called me selfish, bitter, jealous, and accused me of always trying to sabotage her. She claimed that I owed her this because I'd always been the favorite, laughable, given our family history, and that I was ruining her one chance at success. I held firm. She finally collected the dogs, with great difficulty, as she clearly had no actual experience handling multiple animals, and left. I immediately changed my locks and ordered security cameras. The lawn damage was extensive. I got an estimate from a landscaping company, $2,800 to restore it to its previous condition. I called my mother that night, furious about the key. "I don't see what the big deal is," Mom said. "She's family. You have all that space." "The big deal is that she trespassed on my property and caused thousands of dollars in damage." "It's just grass, honey. It'll grow back. You need to be more supportive of your sister." "She's not my sister, and I don't need to support anything. If you give her my key again, not that it matters now since I've changed the locks, we're going to have a serious problem." Mom huffed and hung up on me. Par for the course. I thought, perhaps naively, that this would be the end of it. I had laid down the law. I had changed the locks. I had cameras now. What more could she possibly do? Update 2. It gets worse. Over the following 2 weeks, I discovered exactly what more she could do. The first incident happened the Saturday after our confrontation. I was at the grocery store when I got an alert on my phone from my new security cameras. Motion detected in the backyard. I pulled up the footage and watched in disbelief as Megan climbed over my 6-foot privacy fence. She'd clearly brought a stepladder and let herself into my backyard with 4 dogs in tow. She was there for 3 hours before I could get home. When I arrived, she was gone, but the damage was done. More holes in my already struggling lawn. More waste everywhere. And this time, she'd left behind a dog toy and a water bowl, as if marking her territory. I filed a police report. The officer was sympathetic but explained that because she was family and hadn't actually broken into my house, it would be difficult to pursue charges. He recommended I send a formal written notice prohibiting her from the property. I did exactly that. I drafted a letter, with the help of a lawyer friend, stating clearly that Megan was not permitted on my property for any reason, that any further trespassing would result in legal action, and that I would be pursuing compensation for the damage to my lawn. I sent it certified mail. Her response? She posted on Facebook about how I was harassing her for trying to run a small business, and how some people can't stand to see others succeed. The comments were full of family members, people I barely knew, calling me petty and cruel. But the real nightmare began when I started getting angry phone calls. The first one came on a Tuesday evening. "Is this the address for Megan's Pet Paradise?" A woman's voice demanded. "Excuse me." I dropped my dog off with Megan for daycare, and she gave me this address. "I'm here to pick up Biscuit and nobody's answering the door." I looked outside. There was a woman standing on my front porch with a leash in her hand, looking confused and annoyed. "Ma'am, I don't know what Megan told you, but I don't run a pet-sitting business. This is my private residence." But she said, "I'm very sorry, but you need to contact Megan directly. I have nothing to do with her business." The woman left, but she was clearly frustrated. And she wasn't the last. Over the next week, I had 11 different people show up at my house looking to drop off or pick up their pets. Megan had apparently been advertising her business using my address. She'd even created a Facebook page for Megan's Pet Paradise, with photos of my backyard taken during her unauthorized visits. I was livid. Each person I turned away looked at me like I was the problem. Several left negative reviews on her Facebook page, complaining about the confusing pickup situation and unprofessional communication. Megan, of course, blamed me. She called me screaming one night. "You're ruining my business. Those people are leaving bad reviews because you won't cooperate." Cooperate? You're using my address without my permission. It's not like I have a yard of my own. What am I supposed to do? Not my problem, Megan. Stop using my address. Stop telling people to come to my house. Stop everything. She hung up. But she didn't stop. Update 3. The breaking point. 3 weeks into this nightmare, the situation escalated to a point I never could have anticipated. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was working from home, reviewing case files, when I heard dogs barking in my backyard. I checked my cameras, and there she was again. Megan had somehow scaled my fence again, this time with 5 dogs. I called the police, but they warned it would be at least an hour before an officer could come by. I debated going out there myself, but my lawyer friend had advised me to let the authorities handle it to build a paper trail. What I didn't know was that my neighbor Tom had a 6-year-old son named Lucas. Lucas had seen the dogs from his yard and, being a child who loves animals, had climbed onto a small wooden structure near the fence to look at them. I was watching through my window when it happened. One of the dogs, a medium-sized mutt I didn't recognize, suddenly lunged at the fence, barking aggressively. Lucas, startled, reached out instinctively, and the dog bit his hand through a gap in the fence slats. Lucas started screaming. I ran outside. Tom came running from his house. It was complete chaos. Megan's reaction? That kid shouldn't have been reaching into your yard. That's not my fault. I was too focused on Lucas to respond. The bite was deep. His hand was bleeding heavily. Tom rushed him to the emergency room while I stood there, shaking with fury and fear. The police arrived 20 minutes later. Megan tried to claim she had my permission to be there, a lie that was easily disproven by my security footage and the certified letter I'd sent her. She was cited for trespassing. The dog that bit Lucas was taken to animal control to be quarantined and tested for rabies. Megan was informed she would likely be facing additional charges related to the dog bite, including running an unlicensed pet-sitting business. But here's the thing that really got me: that dog wasn't Megan's. It was a client's dog. And Megan had no documentation, no insurance, no vaccination records, and no business license. The dog's owner was tracked down and was furious, not at me, but at Megan, who had apparently charged them $200 for a week of professional pet care. Tom and his wife, Sarah, filed a lawsuit against Megan for medical expenses. Lucas needed stitches and a tetanus shot, and emotional distress. They asked me to provide a statement and copies of my security footage, which I gladly did. My statement was detailed. I documented everything: the first incident, the police reports, the cease and desist letter, the trespassing citations, the fake business page using my address, everything. I included timestamps from my security footage showing that Megan had been on my property illegally multiple times. That night, I received a call from Megan's father, my stepfather. "You need to make this go away," he said, his voice cold. "You're going to ruin her life over some grass and a little scratch." A little scratch. A child needed stitches, Roger. Your daughter is running an illegal business using my property without my consent. She's been trespassing for weeks despite legal notices. I'm not making anything go away. If you pursue this, you're out of this family. Then I guess I'm out. I hung up. My phone immediately started blowing up with texts from family members, people I hadn't spoken to in years, calling me heartless, selfish, vindictive. My mother left a voicemail crying about how I was tearing the family apart. I turned off my phone and poured myself a very large glass of wine. Update 4. The fallout begins. The following weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and family drama. Megan's business imploded spectacularly. Once the story of the dog bite got out, partly through social media, partly through the neighborhood grapevine, her clients began demanding refunds. Several of them had never received proper contracts, vaccination verification, or receipts. At least 3 threatened to sue her for fraud. The Facebook page for Megan's Pet Paradise became a graveyard of 1-star reviews. People who had used her services came out of the woodwork with horror stories. Dogs returned with fleas, dogs that had clearly been left outside in the heat all day, dogs that came back injured with no explanation. One woman claimed her cat had been lost for 2 days before Megan admitted she'd left a gate open. But the reviews that really caught my attention were the ones blaming me. The owner of the property was rude and unhelpful when I came to pick up my dog. She acted like I was inconveniencing her by existing. Terrible customer service. 1 star. Business appears to have been shut down due to family drama. Very unprofessional. Would not recommend. Showed up at the address listed and was told by some woman that she had nothing to do with the business. Complete scam. Megan had successfully convinced some of her clients that I was the problem, that I had sabotaged her business out of spite. She was telling people that she had a verbal agreement to use my backyard and that I had changed my mind to hurt her. I screenshot every single review and saved them for my lawyer. Meanwhile, Tom and Sarah's lawsuit moved forward. Lucas was recovering well physically, but he'd developed a fear of dogs that broke my heart. I could see him through the fence sometimes, playing in his backyard, and he'd flinch if he heard barking from anywhere in the neighborhood. I voluntarily contributed $500 toward Lucas's therapy costs. It wasn't my fault, legally, but I felt responsible nonetheless. Tom and Sarah told me repeatedly that they didn't blame me, but the guilt lingered. Megan was served with papers not only from Tom and Sarah but also from the city for operating a commercial business in a residential zone without permits. The fine was $5,000. She was also required to obtain proper business licensing before operating any animal-related business again, which required liability insurance she couldn't afford. Her father tried to bail her out, as always, but even Roger's deep pockets had limits. The combination of legal fees, fines, refunds to clients, and the personal injury lawsuit was more than he could, or would, cover. I heard through the grapevine that Megan had been forced to move back in with Roger and my mother. Her apartment lease had ended and she couldn't afford a new place. She was working part-time at a retail store, a far cry from the entrepreneur lifestyle she'd envisioned. Part of me felt a grim satisfaction. A larger part just felt exhausted. Update 5. The final resolution. It's been 3 months since the dog bite incident, and I want to provide a final update for everyone who has followed this nightmare. Tom and Sarah settled with Megan out of court. I don't know the exact amount, they were discreet about it, but I do know that Megan's father paid most of it. The settlement included a stipulation that Megan was not to operate any animal-related business within our county for 5 years, and that she was required to complete an animal care and safety course. Lucas is doing much better. He's been in therapy and recently asked his parents for a puppy. They're considering it, which I think is a good sign. He waves at me over the fence now, and last week he even asked if I was going to get a dog. I told him maybe someday. As for my lawn, I finally had it professionally restored. The landscaping company did an amazing job, and my backyard is actually nicer now than it was when I bought the house. I added some raised beds for vegetables and a small patio area with a fire pit. I've had neighbors over for barbecues twice already. It feels like mine again. I filed a civil suit against Megan for the cost of the lawn restoration, the security cameras I had to install, and the legal fees I incurred dealing with her trespassing. The total was just over $4,200. She didn't show up to the hearing, so I won by default judgment. Her wages are now being garnished until the amount is paid. I've also obtained a permanent restraining order against Megan. She is not permitted within 500 feet of my property. If she violates it, she faces immediate arrest. The family fallout has been significant but, honestly, liberating. My mother called me 2 weeks after the settlement, crying, asking why I was doing this to the family. I explained calmly that I hadn't done anything. Megan had made choices, and those choices had consequences. I was simply protecting myself and my property. "She's your sister," Mom said. "No, Mom, she's not. And even if she were, that wouldn't give her the right to trespass, commit fraud, and endanger children." My mother hung up on me. We haven't spoken since. Roger has apparently decided I no longer exist, which suits me fine. Several extended family members have blocked me on social media, which is also fine. These are people who only ever contacted me to criticize my choices or ask for favors. But here's the thing. I've also received messages of support from family members I never expected to hear from. My uncle, Roger's brother, reached out to tell me that he was proud of me for standing up for myself. He'd apparently seen the way Megan had been coddled her whole life and thought it was about time someone held her accountable. My cousin, who I hadn't spoken to in years, sent me a beautiful bouquet of flowers with a note that said, "Family isn't always about blood. Proud of you." And I've grown closer to some people I never expected. My neighbors. Tom and Sarah have become genuine friends. They've invited me to Lucas's birthday party next month. An elderly woman named Margaret, who lives 3 houses down, stopped me on my walk last week to tell me she'd heard what happened and that I'd handled it with more grace than she would have. "I would have set the fence on fire," she said, completely deadpan. I laughed for the first time in what felt like months. Some reflections. For anyone going through something similar, here's what I learned. Document everything. I cannot stress this enough. Timestamps, photos, videos, written correspondence, all of it. When Megan tried to claim we had a verbal agreement, my documentation proved otherwise. When she tried to blame me for her business failing, I had evidence that she was trespassing. Communicate in writing. After the first incident, I stopped having verbal conversations with Megan or my mother. Everything went through text or certified mail. This was crucial when the lawyers got involved. Get cameras. I hesitated because of the cost, but the security cameras paid for themselves 10 times over. They were the single most important piece of evidence in every legal proceeding. Consult a lawyer early. My lawyer friend gave me advice that prevented several mistakes. I almost confronted Megan directly during one of her trespassing incidents, which could have complicated things legally. Having professional guidance was invaluable. Set boundaries and stick to them. This was the hardest part. The pressure from family to just let it go was immense. There were moments when I questioned whether I was overreacting, whether I should just let Megan use the backyard to keep the peace. But I knew that if I gave an inch, she would take a mile. She'd proven that already. Be prepared to lose relationships. This is the painful truth. When you stand up to a family member, especially a golden child, there will be people who side with them no matter what. I had to accept that some relationships were already so conditional, so toxic, that losing them was actually a relief. Invest in your chosen family. The support I received from friends and neighbors meant more to me than any family obligation ever could. These are people who showed up for me without any expectation of reciprocity. That's real family. Final thoughts. Last weekend, I sat in my restored backyard with a glass of wine, watching the sunset. The grass was green and healthy. My tomato plants were coming in nicely. A gentle breeze rustled through the mature oak tree that I'd fallen in love with during my first viewing of the house. I thought about everything that had happened over the past 6 months. The stress, the legal battles, the family drama. The nights I couldn't sleep because I was so anxious about what Megan might do next. The moments when I doubted myself, when the chorus of "You're tearing the family apart" got so loud I almost believed it. But sitting there, in my space, in the home I worked so hard to own, I realized something important. I don't owe anyone access to my life, my property, or my peace. Megan made her choices. She chose to trespass. She chose to commit fraud. She chose to operate an unsafe, illegal business. She chose to endanger a child. And when she faced consequences for those choices, she chose to blame me rather than accept responsibility. Those were her choices. My choice was to protect myself. And I refused to feel guilty about that. The house is quiet now. Really quiet. And I finally understand why I wanted this place so badly in the first place. It's not just about the backyard or the 3 bedrooms or the good school district I might use someday. It's about having a space that's entirely mine, where I get to decide who enters and who doesn't. That's worth more than any family relationship built on obligation and guilt. For anyone reading this who's dealing with a Megan in their own life, I want you to know, it gets better. Standing up for yourself is terrifying, but the peace that comes after is worth every difficult moment. You deserve boundaries. You deserve respect. And you absolutely deserve to enjoy your own backyard without someone else's dogs destroying it. Edit. A few people have asked about the dogs from the incident. As far as I know, the dog that bit Lucas was released from quarantine after testing negative for rabies. The owner took it back and, I assume, found better pet-sitting arrangements. The other dogs were all returned to their owners. No animals were harmed, which I'm grateful for. None of this was their fault. Edit 2. Thank you all so much for the support and the awards. I've read every comment, and while I can't respond to all of them, please know that your words have meant more to me than I can express. To everyone who's shared similar stories or who's currently going through something like this, you're not alone, and you're not crazy. Trust yourself. TLDR, my stepsister started an illegal pet-sitting business in my backyard without permission, destroyed my lawn, used my address for her fake business, ignored multiple cease and desist orders, and continued trespassing until one of her client's dogs bit a neighbor's child. She's now facing lawsuits, fines, and has a permanent restraining order against her. Half my family hates me, but my lawn looks great.